A battle-hardened soldier returns home, eager to embrace his little girl, only to find his warm house turned cold, hiding a chilling secret. Instead of laughter, he hears his daughter's eerie silence and sinister whispers behind closed doors. Can a father uncover the truth and save his child from the darkness within her own home? What secret keeps an entire town mute? Watch to find out and share your thoughts in the comments. If this story grips you, hit like, share, and subscribe to support us. Your engagement fuels more stories like this. The sun dipped low over the rolling hills of Clearview, a small town cradled by wheat fields, its golden light spilling across the gravel driveway of a two-story farmhouse. A pickup truck rumbled to a stop, its engine coughing before falling silent. Ethan Cole, a Marine Corps sniper, stepped out, his rucksack slung over one shoulder, the canvas patched from years of missions. 3 months in a covert training camp had left dust in his boots and a grin on his face at the thought of his daughter Sophie running to meet him. His boots crunched on the gravel, the sound sharp in the warm evening air as he bounded up the porch steps, the familiar creak of the boards welcoming him home. The door was unlocked, the knob worn smooth from years of use, and a faint scent of cinnamon bread wafted out, curling around him like a memory. The living room glowed under a brass lamp, its light soft, pooling on the familiar plaid couch where Sophie loved to sprawl with her crayons. A stack of her paper dolls sat on the coffee table, slightly askew, their edges curling. A glass of iced tea sweated on a coaster, the ice half melted, catching the light in tiny prisms. The brass lamp swayed, its light flickering across the hardwood floor, polished to a mirror sheen, catching glints of dust in the air. A wall clock ticked steadily, its rhythm blending with the faint chirp of sparrows outside the open window. The scent of cinnamon bread mingled with flour and sugar, stirring memories of Ethan kneading dough with Anna, Sophie giggling nearby. He brushed a framed photo on the mantel, Sophie's toothy grin, frozen in time, his fingers lingering, then paused at a new porcelain vase, its curves too perfect. Clara chattered about a hectic day at the flower shop, her voice bright, but her hands twisted the apron, knuckles pale. Ethan dropped his rucksack, the thud echoing in the cozy space, and called out, his voice bright, eager. "Sophie, Daddy's home." A clatter of dishes came from the kitchen, followed by quick footsteps. Clara, his wife of 2 years, appeared in the doorway, her apron dusted with flour, her dark hair loose, framing a smile that lit up her face. She'd been a florist when they met, her bouquets a comfort after Ethan's first wife, Anna, died in a boating accident. Clara had vowed to love Sophie, to fill their home with warmth. Now she wiped her hands on her apron and rushed forward, wrapping her arms around him, her laugh soft against his chest. "You didn't say you were coming." "Oh, Ethan, we missed you." He hugged her back, the tension of months in the desert melting under her touch, the scent of her lavender shampoo grounding him. "Got leave early," he said, his grin widening. "Where's my girl?" "Upstairs, coloring," Clara said, pulling back, her eyes bright but flicking briefly to the stairs. "She's been a whirlwind today, all crayons and glitter." Her laugh was warm, but her fingers lingered on his arm, a touch too tight, a beat too long. Ethan barely noticed, his heart already climbing the stairs, eager for Sophie's squeal of delight. The hallway was bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight, its star-shaped pattern dancing on the walls, casting faint shadows that flickered like whispers. Sophie's door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out, carrying the faint scratch of crayon on paper. Ethan pushed it open, his boots quiet on the rug. And there she was, Sophie, cross-legged on her bed, her ponytail lopsided, a purple crayon in her hand. Her pajamas were bright with cartoon stars, but the sleeves were short, exposing thin wrists. The fabric stretched tight. Her hair, once tied with bright ribbons, hung loose, strands clinging to her damp cheeks, catching the dim glow of a bedside lamp. She didn't look up, her crayon moving in slow, deliberate strokes, her shoulders hunched, the paper blank except for a single gray line. The lamp's light spilled through a thin curtain, painting star-shaped shadows across the wall, swaying as the wind whistled through a cracked window. A faint creak came from the frame, mingling with the distant hum of crickets outside. The air held a trace of old paper from a stack of storybooks on a shelf, their spines faded. Ethan bent down, spotting a broken crayon under the bed, its surface rough under his fingers, and glanced at the desk. Empty. No paint jars, no glitter. He asked about her drawing, his voice soft, but Sophie shook her head, her fingers tightening on the rabbit, her eyes avoiding his. "Hey, Peanut," Ethan said, his voice a warm rumble, his arms already open. He expected her to leap up, to bury her face in his chest, her giggles filling the room. But Sophie's crayon paused, her fingers tightening, and she gave a small nod, her eyes fixed on the paper, unblinking. The room was tidy, too tidy. No glitter on the floor, no stuffed animals strewn about, just a single rabbit on her pillow, its ear frayed, catching the lamplight. Ethan's grin faltered, but he knelt beside her, his hand hovering, then settling on the bed, not touching. "This is cool, Peanut. Tell me about it." Sophie's lips parted, then closed, her crayon snapping in her hand, the sound sharp in the quiet. Clara's voice came from the doorway, soft but sudden. "She's been quiet today. Probably tired from all that coloring." She leaned against the frame, her apron gone, her smile warm, but her eyes darting to Sophie's paper, then away. Ethan stood, his boots creaking on the floor, his gaze lingering on Sophie's hunched form. "Yeah, probably," he said, his tone easy, but his eyes caught the rabbit's frayed ear, the empty desk where her paints used to spill. Something was off, a faint hum in his gut, like the prickle before a sniper's scope found its mark. Downstairs, Clara was setting the table, the clink of plates a steady rhythm. Her mother, Evelyn, sat at the head, stirring tea, her silver hair glinting under the chandelier, her smile thin, practiced. Tyler, Clara's cousin, slouched in a chair, scrolling on his phone, his earbuds dangling, the faint buzz of music cutting through the air. Ethan joined them, his grin back, sharing stories of desert sunsets, keeping the mood light. But his eyes tracked details. Sophie's juice box missing from the fridge, her glittery cup replaced by plain glass, the paper dolls on the table too neat, untouched. Dinner was warm, Clara's bread fresh, the butter melting in golden pools. Sophie sat beside Ethan, her fork moving slowly, her eyes on her plate, a faint tremor when Tyler laughed too loud, his voice grating like sandpaper. Ethan caught it, filed it away, his smile unwavering but his senses sharpening, like a rifle scope locking on. That night, Sophie slept downstairs on the couch, her rabbit tucked under her arm, her breathing soft but uneven. Ethan sat beside her, the lamp casting a warm glow across her face. No marks visible, but her thinness stood out, her cheeks hollow in the light. He didn't sleep, his hand resting near her, the house too quiet, the silence a weight he couldn't shake. The next morning, Ethan woke to the smell of coffee, the kitchen bright with sunlight streaming through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the linoleum. Clara was flipping pancakes, her laugh light as she teased Sophie about syrup. Sophie sat at the table, her rabbit on her lap, her smile small, fleeting, gone when Clara turned away. Ethan sipped his coffee, his fingers brushing the mug's chipped edge, watching, noting. Sophie's plate barely touched, her eyes darting to Clara's hands. A flinch when Evelyn's spoon clinked against her mug, the sound sharp in the morning quiet. He drove Sophie to school, a red brick building by the fields, its playground dusted with morning dew, the swings creaking in a gentle breeze. She sat in the back seat, silent, her rabbit's ear twisted in her fingers, the fabric fraying further. At the gate, her teacher, Ms. Ellen Harper, greeted them, her smile warm but her eyes uneasy, her pencil tapping a clipboard. "She's been quiet," Harper said when Ethan asked, her voice low, her pencil pausing. "Doesn't play much, jumps at loud noises. Clara says she's just shy." Ethan handed Harper his card, his voice steady, a quiet command. "Anything else? You call me." No delay. He watched Sophie shuffle inside, her backpack sagging, her rabbit peeking out, and added a task: check her school records, talk to other parents. That afternoon, he took Sophie to the park, the swings creaking under a pale sky. She sat on a bench, her rabbit in her lap, her eyes on the grass. "You like it with Clara?" he asked, his tone light, like tossing a pebble into a pond. Sophie's fingers tightened on the rabbit, her voice a whisper. "She's okay." Then quieter. "Grandma says you'll leave if I say stuff." Ethan's hand paused on the bench, the wood rough under his palm, but he kept his voice soft, steady. "I'm not going anywhere, Peanut." "Never." She nodded, but her eyes stayed down, her silence a pulse that echoed in his chest. He needed answers, and he'd find them, one careful step at a time. Ethan postponed his return to base, emailing a vague request for leave, his tone firm, unyielding. He spent the day observing, his sniper's eye catching details. The house too clean, Clara's smile too quick, Sophie's toys gone, her drawings replaced by framed prints. At dinner, Clara was warm, her stories about town gossip light, but her eyes tracked Sophie's every move, noting each bite. Evelyn was distant, her tea steaming untouched, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm. Tyler was restless, his smirk a challenge Ethan didn't miss. Sophie ate in silence, her fork trembling when Tyler's phone buzzed, the sound sharp in the quiet. That night, Ethan waited until the house was still, the only sound the faint hum of the fridge. He slipped into the garage, where Clara kept old files, his boots silent, his flashlight off, relying on touch. He found a locked box, picked it with a paperclip, his fingers steady as if diffusing a trap. Inside were Sophie's medical records, notes of falls and anxiety, dated months when Ethan was away, the handwriting Clara's, not a doctor's. The dates were wrong, a red flag that burned in his gut. He snapped photos, his pulse even, his mission clear. The next day, he visited Mrs. Lila Gray, a neighbor who'd known Anna, her porch cluttered with flower pots, their petals drooping in the heat. She hesitated, her hands twisting a rag, then spoke, her voice low like she feared the fields could hear. "I hear Sophie crying some nights, through the hedge. Clara's voice gets sharp when she thinks no one's around. Evelyn's worse. She's got the town council in her pocket. Ethan." I didn't want trouble. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his voice calm, a quiet vow. "You won't have to. I'll handle it." His next stop was Dr. Henry Voss, Sophie's pediatrician, a stooped man with tired eyes, his office smelling of antiseptic. "I've seen faint marks," Voss admitted, his voice heavy, like he carried the weight of silence. Clara always had a story. Playground scrapes, roughhousing. "I didn't push, but I'll back you now." Ethan's eyes narrowed, his voice low, a controlled burn. "You'll need to. I'm building something airtight." Voss nodded, his hands trembling as he pulled Sophie's file, a silent promise to make amends. That evening, an anonymous note was tucked under the pickup's wiper, the paper creased, the words scrawled in blue ink. "Check Sophie's closet. She hides there." The words hit like a punch, sharp and sudden. Ethan waited until midnight, then checked Sophie's room, his steps silent, his senses on high alert. She was asleep, her rabbit tucked under her chin, its glass eye glinting. The closet door was cracked, a faint draught seeping through. Inside, a folded blanket, her rabbit's spare ribbon, and a crayon note. "Don't tell Daddy." The letters were shaky, Sophie's handwriting, each stroke a plea that burned in his chest. Ethan's training took over, his mind a war room, plotting the endgame. He needed proof, but Sophie's safety was non-negotiable. The next morning, he called his sister, Rachel, who lived an hour away in a quiet suburb, her house full of toys and laughter. "I need you to take Sophie for a few days," he said, his voice low, unyielding, like a command in a firefight. "No questions, Rachel. Just keep her safe." Rachel arrived by noon, her face grim but trusting, her arms open for Sophie. Sophie clung to Ethan, her eyes wide, her voice a whisper. "You're coming back, right, Daddy?" "Always, Peanut," he promised, kissing her forehead, his heart a knot of resolve and guilt. He watched Rachel's car disappear into the fields, Sophie's rabbit pressed against the window, a silent beacon. With Sophie safe, Ethan set his trap, his marine training guiding every move, his love for Sophie fueling every risk. He met his old teammate, Nate, at a diner on the highway, the neon sign buzzing, casting red shadows across the cracked linoleum. Nate slid a duffel across the table. A voice-activated recorder disguised as a wall outlet, a button camera for Ethan's jacket, a motion sensor for the hallway, each device a weapon in his arsenal. "You're walking a tightrope," Nate warned, his voice rough, like gravel under tires. "No choice," Ethan said, pocketing the gear, his eyes hard, unyielding. "She's my kid." He installed the devices that night, his shadow moving in the dark, moonlight slipping through kitchen curtains, glinting off a knife on the counter. The outlet clicked into place, its fake cover seamless, the camera pinned to his jacket, its lens hidden, the sensor set by Sophie's door, its light blinking once. He tested the camera's signal, the phone screen flickering with the kitchen table's grainy outline. A broken cup lay in the trash, its edge jagged, the air heavy with stale coffee. He told Clara he was recalled to base, his voice casual, a lie honed by years of covert ops. He parked his pickup 2 miles away, doubled back through the fields, and slipped into the attic through a loose vent, his body a shadow, his breathing controlled, a sniper in wait. At 2 a.m., the recorder caught Clara's voice, sharp and venomous. "You left that damn cup out again, Tyler. If Ethan saw her mess, he'd ask questions." Tyler's voice mocking. "Relax, she's gone now. You hit her too hard last time, Clara." "Evelyn's worried someone'll talk." Evelyn cut in, her voice cold. "I taught her to stay quiet. She won't say a word." A cup hit the table, shattering, the sound swallowed by Clara's curse. Ethan saved the file, his fingers steady, his resolve ironclad. He needed more, enough to bury them, to ensure Sophie's safety forever. Over 3 days, he gathered recordings of Clara's threats, Tyler's mockery, Evelyn's cold indifference, each file a bullet in his clip. He staged a fake call from the base, loud enough for Clara to overhear, his voice clipped, urgent, a performance that sold the lie. He left the house, knowing she'd drop her guard, her arrogance a weakness he'd exploit. He hid in the attic, a ghost in his own home, listening as Clara snapped at Tyler for leaving dishes, as Evelyn muttered about that weak child, each word a nail in their coffin. The final piece came when he confronted Evelyn alone, his voice a blade, sharp and unyielding. "I know what you've done to Sophie. Speak, or I go to the sheriff, the papers, every damn soul in this town." He held up his phone, the recorder app glowing, a silent threat. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her tea untouched, her voice cold like frost on steel. "Clara's weak because I raised her hard, Ethan. Sophie's soft, like her mother. I told Clara to break her, or she'd never survive this world." Her words were a confession, a miscalculation, and Ethan had it all, every syllable a weapon. He called Nate, his voice low, final. "It's enough. Get CPS here, now. I want this over." Wednesday dawned raw, the fields shrouded in mist, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Ethan stood outside, his breath visible, as Nate, 2 sheriff's deputies, and a CPS worker knocked on the door, their boots heavy on the porch. Clara opened it, her face draining of color, her wine glass slipping from her hand, shattering on the floor like her facade. "This is a mistake," she stammered, her voice cracking. But the warrant silenced her, its words a gavel. Tyler tried to bolt, his sneakers skidding on the gravel, but a deputy caught him, cuffs clicking like a death knell. Evelyn stood frozen, her tea cold, her eyes darting to the door, as if she could will herself invisible. Sophie was with Rachel, safe, her absence a hollow ache in Ethan's chest, as the CPS worker read the charges, her voice steady, unyielding. Evidence of physical and emotional abuse of a minor, corroborated by audio, witness statements, and medical records. Clara's hands shook, her voice a broken plea. "I didn't mean to hurt her, Ethan. I didn't know how to be a mother." Ethan met her eyes, his voice steady, a sniper's precision in every word. "You did hurt her, Clara. And I failed her by trusting you." He turned away, the guilt of his delay a scar he'd carry, a reminder to never hesitate again. The trial was swift, the evidence a tidal wave, recordings of Clara's slaps, Tyler's threats, Evelyn's complicity, photos of Sophie's hidden notes, Voss's testimony of faint bruises, Gray's account of nighttime cries. Clara was sentenced to 5 years for abuse, her shoulders sagging as the gavel fell, her tears silent, unconvincing. Tyler got 20 months for harassment, his smirk gone, his bravado stripped bare. Evelyn faced 3 years probation for enabling, her influence in Clearview shattered, her name a whisper of shame. Sophie stayed with Rachel during the hearings, her laughter returning in small, fragile bursts, like sunlight breaking through fog. In therapy, Sophie drew a field, a house with a blue door, 2 figures under an oak, a tall man, a small girl, their hands linked. Sunlight poured through a large window, painting golden streaks on a green rug, the air thick with the scent of wax crayons. A pencil scratched softly, mingling with sparrow chirps outside. Sophie picked a red crayon, her hand trembling as she drew the roof, then switched to green, carefully outlining a window. Ethan sat back, his hands clasped tight, watching each stroke, the oak tree mirroring one in their old yard. "It's us, Daddy," she said, her smile tentative but real, her eyes bright with a spark Ethan hadn't seen in months. He nodded, his throat tight, the weight of those extra days a shadow that lingered, but her light was stronger, a beacon pulling him forward. A letter came from Clara, written from a treatment center, its envelope worn, as if she'd held it too long. "I see Sophie in my dreams, holding that rabbit, watching me with those quiet eyes. I don't expect forgiveness, Ethan, but I'm trying to change, to understand why I broke her. If she could call me mother, just once, I'd spend my life earning it." Ethan kept it locked in a drawer, unopened most nights, waiting for Sophie to be ready, for her heart to decide what forgiveness meant. One evening, Sophie taped a drawing to the fridge. A house, a field, an open window, the oak tree heavy with leaves. If someone's sorry, she said, her voice soft, like a breeze over the fields. Can they come back, Daddy? Ethan knelt beside her, his voice gentle, a promise etched in stone. Maybe, Peanut, but the window's open for you first, always. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers steady, his heart full. Sophie nodded, running to her room, her steps light, her rabbit tucked under her arm. Keep the door unlocked, Daddy, she called, her voice a melody in the quiet house. Always, Ethan said, his voice a vow. The house no longer a battlefield, but a home, alive with the quiet of healing, a sound he'd never let fade.